The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sackheads Radio. Sackheads Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so very much for joining us here on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. It is the 29th of January 2015. Here on the SHR Media Network, so much to talk about this evening. Thank you so much to the exceptional one, Ken McClenton, who really, you want to talk about trying to follow a tough show. He just had one of the coolest and amazing shows. It was awesome. It really was. If you didn't have a chance to go back and listen, you need to do so, especially the first hour. It was all good. Don't get me wrong, but that first hour was just absolutely awesome. He had the whole segment on sex trafficking, and just go back and listen to it because it's mind-blowing how awesome it was. So thank you so much. Thank you to Jason Miller, the Evan Miller Report. Before them, they're here every single day on the SHR Media Network at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 on the East Coast. Tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Pacific, I think that turns out to be 2 on the East Coast. You do have Southern Sense with Annie. Always a great show. Later on in the afternoon at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 on the East, you're going to have Liz Laura Soldier Talk Radio here on the SHR Media Network. So we're really, really excited because there is so much going on here. You heard Ken allude, if you will, to some changes he's making on his show, and we're going to make some changes on our show. Ironically, it's right around the exact same time that Ken is. Weird, right? Yes, I know, it's weird. But we've been trying out a new platform. Now, for those of you who regularly listen to internet radio, you know the big ones. You have Spreaker, BTR. These are the big servers to get out. Live 365, which is what our server is. And they're all, what's the term I'm looking for? They all lack something. BTR just sucks, and it's getting worse instead of better. Live 365 has its sucky moments, I'm not going to lie. But their customer service is far better than BTR, and they're a little bit more of a stable platform. Little bit. Spreaker is up and coming. It hasn't been tested as much as it should be, and they're missing some, their chat isn't coming around. So about 3 or 4 months ago, I started this worldwide search, and I'm not kidding. I was looking everywhere for new software because the way I look at it is we have some pretty amazing contributors to this network and some friends of the show and some really, really good friends of other shows and some amazing voices who give you the best they can every single day. In my case, sometimes it's 50-50, but overall, everyone does an amazing job. Especially in this new media, as Ken likes to put it, we are the new media. Mainstream media is dying, and we all know that. And this collaboration of people, this collaboration of patriots, if you will, who are trying to save and preserve our nation for the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that and so on and so forth. We know we need an outlet, and we think we found it. And the more I know about it in the future, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but I think you're going to be impressed because it has all the key features that all of our listeners are looking for, and it has some great features on top of that, and our hosts, I should say, our hosts are looking for. So stand by, because we keep trying here. We want to make it better. We want to make it awesome for you, the listeners, because really that's why we do it. You know, I honestly could record myself if I wanted to hear myself talk, or just do what I usually do, sit at my desk and talk to myself. But, you know, we put all this time and effort into the show, not to make money, God knows that, but because we think there's a message, and it's not just us, it's not just Pundit Press, it's not just the Exceptional Conservative Show, or Southern Sense, or Evan Miller Report, or EDL Radio tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Agador, or, you know, Liz, there's more to it. And Ken talks about this all the time on his show, and I really feel that it's something we need to echo. And how can we do that? By making our product better and really, really improving our station and in our little niche and trying to get it better. So that's what we've been working on behind the scenes here. And I want you to know that good changes are coming, great changes. And I want you to stay tuned and stand by with us. If you're a broadcaster that listens to us, contact me. I'll talk about with you a little bit off the air. You can email me, Sean at shrmedia.com. Remember, all complaints go to Soko, S-O-K-O, at shrmedia.com. And really, I think you're going to be kind of blown away. So that's that. Thank you so much for joining us. I've already had a million questions in chat. Where the hell is Clint? Where the hell is Soko? Why aren't they here? Clint is sick. I think he has some sort of nose infection, so it's now covering 2/3 of his body. Because his nose takes up 2/3 of his body. Pitcher Groucho Marx with elephantitis of the nose. That's Clint. So I hope he gets better soon. We wish him well. Soko's a little bit of a different story this week. Soko, well, I came in to do a spot inspection on the studio, and now, as you all know, part of Soko's job is to vacuum and stuff like that. And when I was running my white glove over the windowsill, I got some dirt. So I found this amazing janitorial re-education company in North Korea. And, you know, we put it all together and had Soko's handlers come out and load them up into a cargo plane. And we put plenty of water in the box that we transported them in. Still cheaper than Coach. We got him over there he was on a DC-1, I think, but it took him a few days. He eventually got there. And hopefully by next week, he'll be back and taking better care of the place. So that's that for Soko. That's where Soko is. That's where Clint is. What does that leave? Little old me. Somehow they left me in charge. Horrible idea. And that's for me. I think it's a terrible idea to leave me in charge. But I have some great topics tonight to talk about. All around the world, one of the big ones, and I'm going to lead off with this here shortly, is Boko Haram, because I feel that this is one of the most underreported terrorist groups out there. You see news flashes, you see this, you see that, but a lot of people don't even know what Boko Haram is. They don't even realize that they're Islamist extremists. They don't realize that they have links to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So we're going to talk about that. My goal is to try to keep every story running into the next story and have them be connected by one way or another. So I'm also going to talk about, and egg, that's something I'm going to bring up. You nailed it. Africa isn't sexy in the news, and it's not selling ads. So that's one of the big ones, too. We're going to talk about the Saudi Arabian king dying, not so much that he died, but the fact that Obama was able to somehow make his funeral, but he couldn't end up in France. And then all the blowout with Michelle's not wearing a headscarf, which is somehow getting more news than the fact that Obama could cut his India trip short. So that's kind of interesting and amusing. Let's see, where else we're going to go? And then we're going to run all over the world. I want to talk about a little bit about Russia. I want to talk a little bit about the Taliban, et cetera, et cetera. So I promise you, if you stay with the show, when I come back in about a minute and a half, we're going to get right into the topics. And really, if you want to call in tonight, and we don't take calls often on the show, but when it's me, I'll live on the edge and be dangerous. Phone number is 550-8406. I'm going to be back in 2 minutes here on the SHR Media Network.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean,
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint,
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
also starring Soko as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to The Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
You've been listening.
And I'm back here on the Sackheads Radio Show. See, this is what happens when Soko screws up and has to be sent abroad. I don't know which buttons to hit, but that's fine. That's fine. Already off the bat, I have somebody on the line. I'm not even screening tonight. I know that's so dangerous in this world, but you know what? I figured I'd make it fun. So, caller, you're on the air.
This is the boss of the network, Mr.
Hey,
Sean
how are you,
Lewis.
Jason?
I'm good. You're in charge of the anchor chair tonight, so guess what? You have to be me tonight. If you're reading the news, God help us all. Sean Lewis reading the news.
I'm not reading the news, and I've said this before. I'm going to commentate on it. I'm not reading the news. I don't read news. Nobody. You think anyone wants to hear this accent talk about news topics? No. I'm lucky enough they want to actually listen to me. Never mind just read the news. No. Horrible.
Well, that's why you hired me to work at the network, because I do it for a living.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather somebody that actually knew what they were doing do the news while I do the commentary.
Well, just wanted to wish you the best of luck, and make sure pronunciation is your number one key. You got to get pronunciation right, because you could be open to lawsuits if you don't do that, and might end up on Corey Evans' lawsuits across America.
Well, if pronunciation's key, I'm in trouble already. Jason Miller of the Evan Miller Report, weekdays here at 5 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Jason, I appreciate the good luck, buddy.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Good luck, Sean.
Thank you. So before break, I explained that we would talk a little bit about Boko Haram. And here's the problem I have with Boko Haram and the reporting of it. Most people don't know that we don't even have a lot of information. I think this is part of the problem with Boko Haram. We don't know exactly what they have. ISIS, we have an estimate on numbers, Taliban, all these other terrorist groups. We kind of know roughly how much they have. Africa is so separated from the rest of the world through social media, through all these advances of technology. We still don't know a lot about Africa and what goes on there day to day. So as I'm doing my research, I have seen numbers for Boko Haram, membership numbers, between 500 and 9,000. That's kind of a gap. That's an amazingly huge gap for the estimates. And this is from a bunch of different sites that have this, not just one. What people don't realize is Boko Haram, essentially they're officially called Jamatu Ahi Suna Lida Atwai Wal Jihad. I have said, it took me like 20 times to try to get that. What it means is people committed to the Prophet's teaching for propagation and jihad. War. Jihad is war, ladies and gentlemen. So that's right in their name, so that should kind of sum up where they're going with it. Boko Haram essentially means something. The Western influence is going to be destroyed or something to that effect. I've seen a couple translations on that. So they're this terrorist and Islamic group who operate mostly in Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. This is the scariest part, and this is what bothers me about Boko Haram. They've killed, rough estimates as of this week, over 5,000 civilians. Now that's scary enough. 5,000 lives have been extinguished by Boko Haram. And yet the news is nowhere on it. Nowhere on it whatsoever. You see little glimpses and here and there, and we've talked about it here on the show a couple different times. But overall, you don't see a lot about it. You don't read a lot about Boko Haram wiping an entire town. Listen, when it comes to ISIS, almost every day you can hear what town they're operating in, what they're attacking, what they're not attacking, if they've been pushed back, etc. And that needs to be reported, don't get me wrong. People need to know what ISIS is doing because they are a scary and imminent threat, I believe, to our nation. But, do I have an echo going on? Somebody says I have an echo, and I apologize if I have an echo. I do blame Soko immediately. Of the 276 schoolgirls in April 2014. As a result of Boko Haram's actions, 650,000 people have fled the areas that they are operating in. 650,000 people. Estimates could possibly bring it up to 1.5 million people. Folks, let me tell you. On everybody. So if you want the echo, let me know. Ken says keep it. Other people say get rid of it. I'm just gonna get rid of it, I guess. I blame Soko, and there will be floggings for this. He was supposed to have this all set up. So they're Sunnis, Islamics, and that's the other. Sunni, Shia. You always hear all those different things. Boko Haram is a Sunni Islamic fundamentalist group. In other words, they kill repeatedly in the name of their religion, and they consider themselves Sunnis. I don't even know. I'm not going to lie. When it comes down to Sunni and Shia, it's very, very hard sometimes to separate the two. But here's the good part. This is how you know they're really, really nice people. And when your flag of your group, and I've been part of certain groups, the Irish American Club in Massachusetts, things like that. I've seen the flag, etc. Their group is 2 AK-47s that are crossed, which is a symbolization of armed struggle and willingness to use violence. Well, that's nice. You know, usually when you have a flag, it kind of symbolizes what your group represents. You know, we have a flag here, a couple different flags, but we have a Sackheads Radio flag. Why? It represents us. It's a skull and crossbones, if you will, except the crossbones happen to be microphones and the skull has a bag on his head. It's kind of appropriate. So theirs is the AK that's crossed. Oh, great. They also have, as part of their little flag, the open Quran, the Book of Islam. And then the Islamic Declaration of Faith. And the declarations reads, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, etc., 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 etc. So they kind of fall, if you will, out of every major Islamist terrorist group that we have heard about. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, etc., etc., etc. But still no media coverage whatsoever. And really, that's kind of scary. And I know somebody said, well, you know, it's because they're not doing their job. I 100% agree. Mainstream media is not doing the job. And part of me feels that Ag nailed it on the head earlier is it's not sexy. It's not sexy to talk about everything in Africa because Africa is not sexy in the news. It doesn't sell the advertisers. It doesn't get all the people who get their opportunity to jump in front of the camera and talk about how much they know about a specific reason. It's not sexy unless Ebola is coming, and then it was sexy for like 2 weeks. And then there was the mall shooting last year. Then it was sexy for that whole week. By the way, the mall shooting was carried out by Islamist extremists from Mogadishu, Somalia. But I digress. You know, it's kind of weird to me, side note, why these groups travel to other areas to commit acts, violent, horrific acts under Islamic extremists and whatever their cause is, but they all do it in other areas. They love to cross over instead of doing it in their own neighborhoods. I just think that's bizarre. You always hear about them going to other places. So either way. And they've been around, like I said, a long time. And they're not going anywhere. They were founded by Mohammed Youssef back in 2002. And they've been raising hell ever since. So I ask everybody in the chat room, because there's nothing left to shoot in their region, Ag says. I ask everyone in the chat room and everyone who's listening. Again, the phone number is 916-550-8406 if you want to chime in on this. Why doesn't the media cover Boko Haram? And a side note, and you'll wait, give me a second on this. I'm going to tie it in. There's been a lot of talks about Prime Minister Netanyahu coming to America to speak at joint session of Congress. People have been outraged that the White House can't clear their schedule to meet with the Prime Minister. Their response is that we don't meet with heads of states and from other countries during time of elections in that country. Okay, that's all well and good. I don't necessarily agree with it in this case. I think there should be exceptions to every rule, especially in this White House. They destroy a lot of traditions on a regular basis. However, earlier this week, Secretary of State John Frankenstein Kerry happened to be in Africa, and more importantly, I believe he was in Nigeria. And while he was there, he met with President Goodluck Charlie, who is about to go for a re-election here right around the corner. So when it's appropriate and the agenda fits, the White House won't meet with certain leaders of state, but will meet with other leaders of state. I mean, seriously, why would they ever want to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu? But they'll run all over to Africa to meet with President Goodluck Charlie. It's just something that it really raises some flags with what's going on with this administration. Now, as I live and breathe, I believe I have a dear friend of the show who called in, and I happen to recognize the number. And I want to play one thing before he has his little say, because I know it's going to start.
We ain't found shit.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Exceptional himself, I believe, is on the air. Ken, are you with me, sir?
That is correct, sir. Absolutely.
Ken, are you still with me? Did you hang up on me, Ken? He hung up on me. Well, it's going to be one of those types of nights. I have the echo, some people saying I'm too soft, and then the Exceptional One himself hangs up on me. I'm going to try to call him back. Everyone stand by. We try to get him back on the air. But
I'm sorry, but the person you called has
I'm even getting the voicemail. Well, hopefully he'll call back in. So, isn't there some irony in that? You know, and you want to talk about a time of need. You know, Israel's in a time of need right now. They're constantly being attacked, and I'm going to talk about another attack that occurred just recently and the fact that there may be another major conflict going on in Israel real soon. So I understand that Good Luck Charlie needs some help, and maybe he needs some guidance and assistance from us as a nation. And I'm not against things like that. I'm not against advising, and I'm not against helping out. I understand that sometimes as diplomats we have to do that. But I find it ironic that the president can't meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but we can send Kerry over to Africa to meet with President Good Luck Charlie, who, by the way, might have one of the best names in politics ever, is Good Luck Charlie. That's just my only side note. The Exceptional One, are you back, sir?
Yes, and you sound so godlike this evening, not like the drunken Irishman that you normally sound like.
I do what I can.
Thank you for looking low above the earth and speaking to us this evening.
I don't even know what button I hit to turn it off. I'm almost petrified.
Don't you wish you could take this right to the bedroom? Woman.
Attention, wife. Would it be okay if I ate the last ice cream bar? Bar.
I have seen the errors of your ways, woman.
Put the hammer down, honey. I'm just kidding. Well, it wouldn't be so bad, but she gets mad when I lug the soundboard through the house. She really finds that to be inconvenient.
Yeah. You know, the stuff that we did when we were teenagers was like so cute and so attractive to them. Was tracking that boombox dude, you know. Oh, I tell
Carrying around our little strips of cardboard to breakdance on.
Watch this move, baby. Watch this move. Oh, man.
Ken, Boko Haram.
Yeah.
Isn't this a group
That's
that we should be
not sexy,
paying?
man. That's not sexy. Oh, man. You should have gone with something that was a little bit more sexy, like did Bo Bergdahl get his hair cut by Oprah's seamstress before he left Afghanistan? Details at 11. See, something like that. You know, that's sexy.
I have my fodder file later when I talk about everyone being more outraged that Michelle didn't wear a headscarf than they are about the fact that the president went to the funeral for the Saudi Arabian king, who oftentimes his country does things just as bad as ISIS. But we'll get into that.
Yeah. But before we move on that one, at the end of my Wednesday night show, I made this statement that I will have to now retract. I didn't retract it on my show because then my audience would think that I was imperfect. So I choose your show. I said for the first time in 6 years, I was proud that Michelle Obama was my first lady.
Yes.
Okay? And then the White House comes out this morning and says that she was not trying to protest by not wearing a headscarf, and that other people had met with the Kings before and not worn a headscarf. Okay? I take back what I said. I am no longer proud that she is the First Lady of the United States. That lasted only about 8 hours. You know what I'm saying?
But you know what that was. You know what that was is once people started giving her flack for not follow the quote-unquote tradition, somebody in the White House whose name rhymes with Mallory probably said, oh, no, we have to get right out in front of this. They can't know that she was being a pain in the rear end. And then they came out with that statement. I mean, when is it going to end? When is it going to end? You know, come out and, you know what? I would have so much more respect for them if she just said, yeah, you know what? I'm not wearing it. I don't believe in it. Or it'll mess up my hair. I don't care. You know, I don't care why she didn't do it. I really don't. The fact that she didn't do it, I was like, oh, hey, you know what?
You know, no one needed to know that. Yeah, no one needed to know that Michelle was that shallow. No one. Yeah. I mean, the one time people, I mean, you've taken food from kids and you know, you give them 3 string beans in the lunch line now, and that's a full meal. I mean, and it's in the carrot drink that they don't want. You know, for the first time, people are like, you know what? I can respect her. And 8 hours later, the White House took that away. I mean, this White House is really, really comedic. I mean, who is the great writer of Blazing Saddles?
Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks, right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Mel Brooks could not have written the Obama presidency. Not at all. Not at all. If someone wrote this script, if it was Michael Moore writing this, they would say that he had gone off the tequila float. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
No one could write this script.
Nope.
But you know what's even worse? You know what's even worse? The GOP. Okay? How can you be so fallible around someone who's just completely incompetent? This is a great comedy series, and I think they should play it a little bit later on after he leaves office.
I agree with you. I think this should be a weekly series, and you could just call it Battle of the Dumbs or something like that.
No. Oh, remember Charles in Charge? Obama in charge. Bam! There we go.
I got Charles in charge of me.
And you got a show now that can play on both ABC and Bounce TV, BET. You know, we got something here.
Hey, we got something that we can cross network. Hey, Ken, will you stay with me through the break? Because I do want to come back.
Yeah.
I do want to get your thoughts on Boko Haram.
Okay.
Because I'm sure you have relatives or something that know them personally. I just want to talk about it is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's another boat of us coming in.
More with the exceptional one, Boko Haram, and a lot more here on the Sackheads Radio Show on the SHR Media Network. Back in a minute.
All right.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf from a stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Soko as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border and says coordination, we got to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to The Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And welcome back here to the Sackheads Radio Show. It is I, Sackhead Sean, large and in charge, all by himself, and I want to know what the audience thinks about that. Oh, no, thank you. Oh, stop it. Thank you. That is just, no, really, keep going, please. I know. Thank you very, very much. It's good to have a live audience, Ken. You should try it sometime.
I will. Next time I go to heaven, speak like you.
Live with us on the line is the exceptional one himself, Ken McClenton, Monday through Thursday here on the SHR Media Network at 6 p.m. And then early 7 a.m. Eastern Time, Friday morning, you can catch him as well. And then later in the afternoon, he's the exceptional Going Commando on Conservative Commandos. He's just a very, very busy man and a wonderful, wonderful friend of the show and confidant. And we're talking a little bit about Boko Haram because we started to do what we do oh so well when we chat is go off on a tangent.
Exactly. Did Jesus tremble in fear when you came to heaven? Like, oh my God, it's Sean! I'm sorry.
I got to the gates and St. Peter was like, really, a megaphone? And I was like, well, you know. He was like, yeah, you're not coming in yet. Head back down. Okay.
But you know, I think you're onto a very huge topic because there are distinct comparatives between Boko Haram on the west of Africa and ISIS in the Middle East. And we are sincerely, under this particular administration, being hoodwinked and bamboozled and led astray, taking our eyes off the fact that terrorists are terrorists, and you have to define the enemy as they are so that you can fight the enemy both within our culture and outside of it. And Boko Haram, I feel sorry for the leader of Boko Haram because, you know, to be honest with you, the guy went through a city just last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, went through an entire city and killed 2,000 people, and he wasn't on the cover of the Wall Street Journal or anything else. I mean, it was like on page 816, you know what I'm saying? It's like, what do I have to do to get front page?
Well, you'd think that maybe they'd replace their PR person or something. Something has to break.
Something. But there is an alliance. I'm sorry.
No,
there
that's
is an
fine.
alliance between those two. ISIS and Boko Haram. Go ahead.
Absolutely, I think there's an alliance. And, you know, one of the points that I want to get to, and I can jump into it now, is why we are dignifying these individual groups by their little name instead of just calling them Islamist extremists in Africa, Islamist extremists in Iraq, et cetera, et cetera. And I know why the administration do it because they want to be the world police and they want to be everyone's buddy and friend. But why isn't those of us in new media and those of us who are kind of trying to change the face of that, start calling them what it is instead of calling them Boko Haram, which I call them that because that's the only way people know it.
Yeah.
But we have to do a better job of informing people of, hey, this is the same Islamic extremists that attacked the World Trade Center. It may be a different group per se, it may be a different cell, but it's still Islamist extremists, as they are in Bali, as they were in France, as they were everywhere else where they're killing people in the name of Allah in their book. And that's something that I think we have to stop dignifying them as individual groups and teams, if you will. You know, it's like if you run down all the different, it's like a sports team. Well, this week Al-Qaeda beat the local Syrians 3-2. Boko Haram beat up the Nigerian military 4-1. And ISIS in a 1-1 tie with the Iraqis. And that was given an assist to the Canadian Special Forces there. So, you know, we have to stop.
Exactly. You're right on target, man. You're right on target. You know, literally, when you listen to the White House, you would think that the 4,000 lives that we lost in the Middle East from our American soldiers, I mean, was like nothing. I mean, come on. It was, I don't even know why we were there. Let me stay on point here. I'm sorry. The bottom line here is that you have obfuscation going on at the White House. You are virtually looking, and everyone can see it. Those of us who knew a year before he won the election that his isolationist thinking, just like Rand Paul's isolationist thinking, and as well his thoughts. These are not Rand Paul's thoughts, but his thoughts are that America's true enemy, America's the devil. And unless we kill the devil, then the world won't be safe. And I know a lot of people might say that, Ken, you're over the top here, especially my black brethren who are listening to this show.
That'll make two.
The only white show on the network. But seriously, we have to admit, first and foremost, that isolationist thinking and thinking that it's unconstitutional is at the root of why we are failing in our ability to fight the terrorists here and abroad.
Yes.
It is Obama's foreign policy and, i.e., Hillary Clinton's foreign policy because she instituted it. Every Lenin needs a Stalin. It is their foreign policy that is crashing and burning right before our eyes. And as a result of that, millions of people around the world are dying at the hands of their illegitimate, illicit, and romantic opinions about what utopia would look like if every totalitarian had his way. The bottom line is we have a problem in the United States, and that problem is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with a commander-in-chief who has lost control of his army because they leaked that information about Bo Bergdahl. Lost balance in terms of the understanding of who our enemy is, and who is hooked on colonial thinking that, along with bringing in the caliphate, which is what Boko Haram is trying to do in Nigeria right now, they are attempting to make the caliphate possible by negotiating with Iran and demystifying our alliance with Israel.
Yes. Well, and that's, I love the fact that you know me so well that you have my next couple topics all lined up in your head. I applaud that always with you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, boss. I had to put those papers together for you, and I read them down. I know I'm sorry, sir. I didn't read some. Miss Mary read some to me. Oh, no. She didn't read them. I just memorized when you talking. Go on, boss.
Well, and so we know that part of the problem with this president's foreign policy is that he everything's a red line. Everything's too little, too late.
Because actually, right about here, it would be Clint that would jump in because Sean is rolling all over the floor laughing. I'm sorry. Go right.
Oh man. Part of the problem with this administration is they've been too fearful to take the fight to the people that need to have the fight taken to them. He doesn't want to be the president of war. He tried to vilify Bush for what he did after 9/11 as being the warmonger, and we're not the party of war, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Tell that to LBJ. But, it's one of those things that he's afraid to take this fight because he doesn't, but he also will not support the nations that will take the fight. And you brought up Israel. You look at right now our relationship with Israel and the outrage that's coming out of some people that Prime Minister Netanyahu's been invited to speak, and how dare they bring him here. And I'm not meeting, the petulant child is the petulant child. Well, I'm not seeing him if he comes here because we got to come up with an excuse. What's a good excuse? Oh, yeah. He's just about to have an election, and historically the White House doesn't meet with any head of state that's having an election. So,
bull.
I know, right? I thought that was the best BS lie that they've ever come up with. But Israel has been having this issue with Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestine, and they're all really proxies of Iran. That now there are reports that Hamas is being infiltrated by ISIS and almost kind of forced aside by ISIS. ISIS trying to muscle in on the territory, which, if you think of the old mob back in the 60s and 50s and 40s, that's what they used to do, is they'd get into a little bit of a turf war to take over more power, which is what they want to do. And our administration is trying to meet and sit and play poker with Iran.
Yeah.
What does that say? What does that say to our allies?
Well, I think our allies after the first term, and this is to be honest, because a lot of people raise that, and especially conservative talk show hosts, in order to keep people's attention for the next 2 years. I'm going to let you all know, and we had Dr. Sylvan Sherratt on, who is a member of the Center of Values and Visions at Grove City College in Pennsylvania, and he does his work from France. And he laughed out loud. He was, but he laughed, but he was also angry at the fact that our foreign policy has denigrated to the point that our ambassador is not a prudent and wise diplomat, but one who actually plays a guitar and sings hit songs. James Taylor. We have really gotten to a point of complete and total embarrassment on the world stage. I mean, literally, there are world leaders who, when you bring up the name Obama, give me a second. Hold up. Oh, that hurt. Oh. And you're asking people like Vladimir Putin, who, if you don't actually allow him to use your petrochemical place for his own gain, will throw you in prison, Mr. and Mrs. Billionaire. For all those people who believe that money makes a difference in the world. The bottom line is people don't care about this administration anymore. The world has left the stage, getting out of this president. It's the CNN crowd, the MSNBC crowd, and the conservative talk show hosts of Fox News who want you to believe that Obama makes a difference on the world stage. The only way that he makes a difference is with his military. And when the commander-in-chief sends 3,500 troops to the Middle East for the purposes of gathering intelligence and sends another 800 to fight Ebola in Western Africa, every real commander-in-chief who has an army, including ISIS, is rolling on the floor that this man doesn't understand military strategy. He doesn't understand diplomacy.
Whatsoever.
And it's not that he doesn't understand it. It's he's purposely doing this because he doesn't want us to win. That's my opinion.
Well, either that or he's so worried about his damn image that he's afraid to actually commit. And that's the scary part. And one of the things that he does that I just don't understand is I think he's one of these presidents who thinks he can set guidelines and rules for the military and kind of interject on what he thinks they should do. And guest 22 and the 75 in the chat room nails it. He doesn't know how to use the military. And one of the things that he does not do well is say, here is your objective. I want these guys eliminated from this area because they are a threat for reason X, Y, and Z. Go. Right?
Yeah.
That's what a good leader does. You delegate your authority. If you are in charge of any sort of major corporation, you're not going down to the production floor and telling them how to produce things. You're saying, I want these items produced the best way possible and for the cheapest amount of money or whatever your goal is. You go do that. This president doesn't do that. He has all these ROE rules that are just ridiculous. He doesn't like to call it terrorism. He absolutely undermines our own military. I used to think that when people were talking about the purge in the military 3 years ago and how he got rid of certain generals and stuff like that, I was like, oh, all right, that's a little Alex Jones fringy sometimes. But then you started seeing the people who were getting eliminated or quote-unquote retiring, and I was like, oh, well, all right, well, maybe I was just, there's still ironic. I mean, there's still just some irony involved. It's not that. And then what they did to Petraeus, I said, oh, wow, okay, I'm way off. Like,
exactly. But this is the way I want people to take a look at it, and hopefully I'm not coming up against a hard break. Because I'm going to make this very succinct if we are.
8 minutes for 8 minutes to the stop.
8 minutes. Okay. This will not take up the full 7. So here we go.
And I'm not going to lie. I think Ag's on hold, and while we're talking, I'm trying to figure out how to do the conference on this. So keep going.
But you don't put a Ford motor on a Toyota and expect the Toyota to work the way it's supposed to. Okay?
Why not?
I think, I really believe, without a shadow of a doubt, we do ourselves as citizens a disservice. Now, according to the Constitution, we're supposed to be guaranteed a Republican form of government.
Yes.
And that's the role of the Congress as well as the role of the president in terms of executing the law. But we have someone who has a philosophical and ideological difference of opinion of how America is and should be. So when we take that person who is ideologically bent, cracked, and we put that engine into that pristine Toyota, and then we turn the engine on, cracked as it is, disheveled as it is, broken as it is, and we turn on the engine and we expect it to run like a Republican form of government, it will fail each and every single time. And so the question becomes, what are we really expecting out of this administration that's any different from what they're doing? Nothing, in fact. And if we continue to argue that he's incompetent, then we argue that we're incompetent. No, I think the American people made two big mistakes. 2008 and 2012. And the bottom line is, you got an individual in there who purposely doesn't want the military to work because he's against the American military. He believes that it has been the strong man to the world's strong man. You have someone in there who doesn't want churches to take care of the poor because he believes he can enslave everyone with poverty coming from the government. You have someone who really believes that it is the role of a nation to be under a totalitarian regime with the access to capital spending, i.e. Cuba. The bottom line is very simple. It does not fit America. Yet America keeps trying to work that little piece of crap with a broad iron into the engine and make it work. Ain't going to happen. So the bottom line is, I believe he wants to see a caliphate. I believe he wants to see Iran with nuclear arms. I believe that he wants Israel to move 10 miles to the west into the Mediterranean. That's what I believe. And then he's forming an opinion and policies that make that happen.
It's one of two things. It's either nefarious or it's complete incompetence. But either way, it's happening.
Yeah. Well,
that's the scariest part.
Nefarious is now. Incompetence was us.
and now you look forward. You know, it's funny how many what we'll do in the Middle East to fight ISIS. We'll bomb ISIS. We put groups back on the ground, soldiers back on the ground in Iraq, even though they're just observers and gathering intelligence. But they're not. They're fighting because they have to. And you know that's going on because the Canadian Special Forces, it's been all over the news that they've been engaging with ISIS in Iraq. So, you know, we're not standing by while the Canadians lead the charge. Maybe. If Kel Fritzy was in the chat room tonight, I'd make a Canadian joke. But, you know. Hey?
Hey?
But he just doesn't commit to anything. That's one of the scariest things is, you know, and what's good for one group of people is never good for the other. Listen, whether you like it or not, losing Iraq to me is one of the biggest international F-ups that could have happened. And not just because we put so much into it, not just because, even though this is the most important thing to me, American lives were lost to try to gain the liberation of the people of that country. But what that told the nation, and what that tells every enemy combatant out there, and what that tells rogue nations like Iran, North Korea, now Yemen, because I want to talk about that in a little bit as well, that says we have no spine whatsoever. And we are going to roll over, lay down, and allow you to do what you do. And really, you look at people like Putin, and there's a story today that England intercepted yet another set of bombers from Russia on their airspace and right on the edge of their airspace. And guys like Putin, they stare at him, and they're like, oh, this is like blood in the water. I can do whatever I want. I can invade Ukraine. And that's the other thing that drives me nuts about, when are we just going to stop saying Ukrainian separatists and call it the Russians?
Hey,
because
I can even park a Russian war vessel outside of Cuba while you're jumping up and down talking about you're opening new relations with Cuba. No one takes it seriously. And with you know, I just want to say this because I know we come out to a hard break because you're listening to SHR Radio's best talk show, Sackheads Radio. And I'm your co-host this evening, the exceptional one, Ken McClenton. But I just want to say this as we go to a hard break. We are profoundly misjudging the way the world sees us, continuing to allow this man to continue as commander-in-chief.
Yes.
We must execute the law. He is not above the law. And Bo Bergdahl is an example where he has taken the law beyond the course that it should have gone. And we as a nation beyond where we should be.
Well, when I come back, I want to talk about Bo Bergdahl. I want to talk a little bit more about Israel, and I want to talk about a whole litany of different things. So it's going to be the lightning round. I also know I have Agador on hold. I haven't forgot about you, Ag. We will bring you in once I figure out how to conference, or maybe I'll let the exceptional one grab a drink of water. But give me 3 minutes. Give me 3 minutes, and we will be back here on the Sackheads Radio Show. I am your host for the evening, Sackhead Sean. We will be back here live on the SHR Media Network.
Right back in. Controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Soko as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to The Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show, live from the SHR Media Network headquarters and studios in beautiful downtown city I can't name. Now, I do have the exceptional one on hold, and I am going to put him on hold for a minute because I've had someone on hold, and he doesn't get to call into the show that much because we don't normally take calls. But tonight I make very, very special exceptions. So I'm going to bring Agador, the man with the sexiest voice on internet radio, as he said to me when he gave me this whole list of things to call him as I was bringing him in. Ag, are you there? Hello, Ag. Ag. Okay.
I'm here.
Who's on hold?
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are, Ag. How are you, buddy?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I am. I bet you there's a delay on your side, and I don't know why.
Yep, still here. Apparently, I'm on super mega time delay. Is how I am. I'm not hearing you over the phone, but apparently you're getting me in a really low register over the radio.
Very, very bizarre. Let's try to call back in a little bit and figure that out because I'm not smart enough to deal with the delay. And it also, I'm not going to lie, it makes bad radio. So, Egg, try to call me back, buddy, and I'll see if I can get it to work. I don't know if it's on my side or not, but the 30-second delay, do you remember like in the 80s, Ken, when you would call like Europe or something like that, and it was almost like sending a Morse code? You had to like say what you had to say and then wait 35 seconds?
I'm the lead singer for the Sackheads, baby. Yeah. Oh, I'm on the air? Oh.
Yeah. That might have been, I'm not going to lie, that might have been one of the absolute best fade-ins you've ever done.
Oh, man. It is so good to be on Sackheads Radio. I am not often here, and there's a reason for that.
So, we were going to break, and I had, I was talking on Twitter and direct messages, and he asked me to keep his name quiet because, believe it or not, he fears retaliation. But I was speaking with a young man that I'm Twitter friends with over in Israel. And he's about 17, and he's one of our followers. And he actually listens to the show fairly regularly. And he says, what the hell is wrong with your country? In no uncertain terms. And he said, Israel's always been a close ally of America. We've always tried to be close with America. So why are we cast aside by this administration? Why is this administration trying to hurt us so much? Why can't they realize, and why can't your country realize, that we are under constant threat? We're surrounded by countries and people that want us dead. And we need your help. Isn't that scary?
No, what's scary is actually his belief after 6 years of watching his prime minister be humiliated, buffooned, denigrated on a world stage, that actually there is some compassion of heart in this man. That's scary to me.
Yes.
What's scary to me is when you have the prime minister of the only ally that you have, and I do mean that, the only real ally that you have in the Middle East.
Yep.
And you leave him at the dining room table. I'm sorry, you leave him in the foyer to go to the dining room table to have dinner with your family and not tell him that you've left the meeting. When you have a man who actually has to sit down across from you before media cameras and explain to you the history of Israel in the U.S., to actually listen to someone denigrate the great state of Israel because they actually want to build homes on their land, I'm sorry.
Who the hell do they think they are?
Exactly. And listen, what are you expecting? I'm going to tell you the truth, okay? I'm just grateful to God that this man hasn't figured out what that red button is next to him, because I know he would have wiped out Israel himself if he had an opportunity.
Well,
the two-state solution. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. And it's one of those things, when you have a president, and this president, even if he was, let's say he didn't personally like Israel, but he understood the relationship, so then he said, all right, listen, our policy is going to be we support Israel, but I'm not going to be too touchy-feely with these guys. For whatever reason, I don't agree with Bibi Netanyahu. I think he's a jerk. Whatever. Okay, fine. But, part of being a leader is you have to put your personal differences aside. But he still supported Israel through his actions even. I don't care about words. It's the actions that scare me. And when you won't meet with the prime minister of one of our closest allies, but you will try to negotiate with Iran, the country that has sworn they would wipe them off the face of the planet, our number one ally.
Yeah.
It says a lot about who you are as a person. I want to jump out of Israel because speaking of...
Can I say this real quick about Israel?
Yeah.
And this is where I blame Bibi. Bibi and I go back a long way.
You and the Beepster?
We shared the same ramen noodles. No,
when you guys were just young bucks together?
Exactly. Just hanging out, you know what I'm saying? Hey, same synagogue, your parents, my parents, No, but in all seriousness, this is where I fault the Israelis, and you can tell your friend, this is from me, this is where I fault your people. When you run around and you entertain the ideal of a two-state solution to your one-state issue, you are a sovereign state. You don't have a problem. It's those guys who are sitting up there who have 41 other states around them that they can move to, but they don't want to move because they want to throw you into the ocean, and the other states don't want them because they know that they are hecklers and havocers and God-swelling Philistines. When you know that, you don't want those Philistines in your country. So the bottom line is the real one-state solution is the only solution here. Israel needs to toss these people and blow up Gaza. Then we can start talking about what's wrong with my country.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they understand that as well. But would it be safe to argue that the Israelis have moved in that position hoping to fix negotiations or fix the relationship with America?
No, they've moved in that direction because they have liberals that move to Israel, liberals that move out of Europe and Russia into Israel, and have taken on the cause of many liberals around the world that believe that Israel is the problem. It's kind of like when people leave New York for Texas because the company left to create jobs there, but they don't change their liberal viewpoint. They believe that it was by their efforts that company moved from New York to Texas to create jobs. The bottom line is they bought into this two-state solution under the Jimmy Carter era. And speaking of which, another foreign policy era of American history that hasn't worked out too well. They bought into this two-state solution. They've been trying to ease a two-state solution onto themselves and their people because the liberals have sold them hook, line, and sinker this bill of goods. The bottom line is the only state solution that Israel has is a one-state solution, and everyone else has to go. If they continue, and this is where Prime Minister Bibi has his problem, he continues to negotiate under a two-state solution facade. It's not going to work. It never was intended to work. And by golly, if you give up any more land from your 1948 settlement, you might as well just erase Israel off the face of the world without any nuclear attack from Iran.
Well, and I think part of the problem is I blame the world as a whole as well, though, because instead of anybody standing up next to the Israelis and saying, hey, no, the one-state system works, so many nations were like, well, you should think about talking to them, because if you talk to them, maybe, like Barbara Boxer says, if you put down your guns, then all the other people who have guns will just put theirs down, and there won't be any problem. And I think they keep believing that, all right, maybe if I give just a little bit, the rest of the world will understand that I'm not the jerk in this. But it doesn't happen. No matter what happens with Israel, it doesn't matter how many rockets they get lobbed over to them. It doesn't matter how many of their soldiers and civilians die. As soon as they retaliate, the world blames them, and they allow it, and we don't come to their defense. I got to close this matter because I would talk. You know I'm a huge supporter of Israel. I will go all night on this. I feel that we just treat Israel as a nation. Our administration treats them like dirt, and they should be treated like brothers. And that's one of my biggest problems with that. You mentioned Bergdahl a little bit earlier, and I had my. This is what happens when Ken and Sean get talking, because I had all my topics lined up, and one led into the other through specific things, and now I've lost it all. So
I'm sorry. That's just an exceptional kind of thing to do.
It is so exceptional of you. You know, all the talk about Bergdahl this past week, and it looks like they're going to file charges against him for desertion. I wrote an article, by the way, for those who don't know, this last week was a big week for me. I've been asked to be a contributor to Pundit Press, which I accepted, so I'll be a regular written contributor over there. And also SavingOurFuture.com. I've been asked to be a regular contributor for my written stuff over there. So if you get a chance, check out both of those amazing websites. Tell them I sent you, read all my stuff, share it, like it a bunch of times, sign in under different names and leave comments about how amazing I am. That's what I like to do, et cetera, et cetera. Moving on. Bergdahl's probably going to be charged. It's no real shock. What the shock is what we traded to get a guy that we want to prosecute. And isn't it amazing how there's been other soldiers who have been held and killed that we couldn't get back, but a guy who allegedly deserted, and there was overwhelming evidence that he deserted, we traded 5 enemy combatants for the Taliban, and we get him back only to prosecute him. Doesn't that seem like a bizarre conundrum to you? Like, what was the thought process that goes into that?
Let me just say here first and foremost that the most amazing thing about the Bo Bergdahl issue isn't the trade, because we know that if he could have traded every person from Gitmo for Bo Bergdahl, he would have done it, would have shut it down, and he would have claimed victory over terrorist attacks, and he would have brought all the troops home, and he would hope that people would say that he was the greatest peacemaker in the history of mankind. The bottom line is that we are beginning to see, and this is just me, and I had Liz Loris on my show on Wednesday, and I broached this with her. There is a great disdain for the Obama administration inside the Pentagon and on the battlefields of America. And I think I've never served in the country as an armed serviceman, although I wanted to, but my mommy kept me from doing it. But the whole idea, go to school, boy. Don't go.
But Mom,
yeah, I know. I wanted to get on that bus, and my mom made the man go. She tore up my papers. But the whole idea is this in a nutshell. The president has a real problem right now, and I just want to be very serious, because I was serious about his nefarious efforts up until now, and they were tolerable until he defaced the American soldier. The blood, the sweat, and the tears that have been poured out for every single American that suffered fatally and injuries which are irreparable.
Yes.
And when he began to take the troops out of Afghanistan against the will of the commanders, saying that there is a problem here and you're not listening to us, and then more soldiers died in Afghanistan under the Obama administration than in all the time of the Bush administration. The problem here is that your military is kind of tired of you. And if this leak comes out from the military, from the Pentagon, it is a sign that there is dissonance between the military and the commander-in-chief. And the reason why I bring that up, and I brought that up with Liz, and she agreed with me that there is dissonance, is that is a very tenuous part for people to take advantage of a situation within the military and outside of the military. And what you're watching here, before your eyes, is a battle between a commander-in-chief and his military. This hasn't happened since McClenton and Lincoln, or you could go back to say that it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt with Dwight Eisenhower and George S. Patton. There is a war going on right now in our military, and I'm not too certain if this administration will be able to hold up, because this is a small leak. Imagine how many other leaks that could be amassed and how many other congressmen can be chastened to receive that information that was once considered secret, but now part of investigation against this administration in its handling of military affairs in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and other places around the world. This is a sincere and serious issue right now. And trust me, this administration is trying to find out who the mole was, and they will do whatever they can to eliminate that mole by any means necessary, I would say.
I would agree with that. I really would. We talk about how this military has been treated, and I just posted in the chat room a young man who used to work for me a long time ago. His name's Will Hoover. He just returned home from an attack in Afghanistan that happened back in August, and he's one of the only guys that was right there when it happened to walk away from it. And when I think about how our military gets treated from this administration top to bottom, we talk about this with Liz a lot. I think of people like him. I think what we don't do as a nation, what we need to do more, is put a name and a face to when our military is left mistreated, and when our military is not done right. I had a young Marine who did a tour in Afghanistan, who still currently works for me, when Iraq fell to ISIS, who wanted nothing more than to sign back up and go back over and get it, not for himself, but for all the people that died trying to free and liberate that region, especially Fallujah and stuff like that. And to this day, he talks all the time that if he could, he would sign up with the Kurds to help fight ISIS, because he believes it's the right thing to do. And the military is overwhelmingly believe it's the right thing to do, that the threat needs to be extinguished before it reaches our shores in dividends. And again, what do they get from this White House? Rhetoric, mistreatment. The president can't even stop at a VA hospital in Texas. The VA has yet to be fixed. But thank God we have Obamacare, because the VA worked out so well that we must be able to do it countrywide. It's deplorable. It's absolutely deplorable.
I think the Obama administration would have been able to make the tour to the VAs if King Abdullah had died at one of the VAs. I think they would have been able to make it.
Or they at least would have sent John Kerry. As long as it wasn't a VA outpost in France.
But what's really, a lot of people say that, Ken, you're over the top when you talk about him being so nefarious that he's so Manchurian. You're really over the top, Ken, and you're disrespecting the office of the presidency, and that's why I don't respect you as a talk show host or whatever. And that's fine. If you hold that opinion, that's great. But I want to give you the starting lineup for the five. The ISIL team, the starting five that were released for Bo Bergdahl. Khair Ullah Saeed Wali Saeed-Kwa was an early member of the Taliban in 1994. Wow, Taliban's not an enemy, huh? And he is back on the battlefield out of Pakistan. How about starting forward, Mullah Muhammad Fauzi? He commanded the main force fighting the U.S.-backed Northern Alliance in 2001 and was the chief army staff under the Taliban regime. Gee, Taliban's not a problem, is it? Well, he's the starting forward. He's back on the battlefield. How about the starting center, Mullah Narullah Nouri? Nouri served as governor of Balkh province in the Taliban regime. Wow, there's a theme
nice.
here, huh? He's back on the battlefield fighting. How about their point guard, Abdul Haq Bazik?
The point guard.
Was the deputy chief of the Taliban regime's intelligence service. His cousin was head of the service. Talk about nepotism. He's back on the battlefield fighting against American troops. And then finally, the starting guard, shooting guard, Muhammad Nabi Amari. He was Amari was a minor Taliban official. Wow, see, you graduate from Taliban U and you get to be a starting member of the JV.
Tell you.
Tell you. I tell you.
Let me tell you something.
I tell you something.
Go tell. Go tell.
He's on the battlefield. All five are back on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Shooting at our American troops.
Yep. It's a disgrace.
I asked you if their head coach, Obama, has done a wonderful job in that 4-member trade for Bo Bergdahl. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, or I'm going to start calling him Bag of Balls. Bo Bag of Balls. Because
shake him, shake him, shake him.
And the funny part is, we're coming up on a break, but the funniest part is, Ken, is, do you remember when the Taliban was a terrorist group?
Really?
Really? Yeah. They used to be designated per our foreign terrorist list as a terrorist group. But an amazing thing happened this week.
No way! You misunderstand. All the candy they hand out at Christmas, you misunderstand.
All the candy. Wow, everything looks like little fake sticks of candles with cords. It's weird. It's the strangest candy I've ever got. But it comes with a free clock, so that's good. When we come back, I want to talk to you about the new designation for the Taliban, an article that I wrote, and why I believe the designation has changed. The exceptional one will stay on the line because his contract demands it.
Yep, that's it. I'll be working for the ball.
Thank you so very much. We'll be back in 3 here on the SHR Media Network.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying cow for the stupid promo.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Soko as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking, drinking, drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border,
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to The Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And we're back here on the Sackheads Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, having a great time with the exceptional one who has become my de facto co-host for the evening. He thought he was going to be able to slide in and slide out like some sort of funky, cool man, but I got him. I caught the tiger by the toe, if you will.
Slippity slide. Get about your troubles.
I cannot wait for Freedom Fest 2015 because it is going to be the first time. You know, we've been friends a long time now, and I think it's going on 3 years. Yeah, right around 3 years, and we've never had the ability to sit, have a beverage, and really go face to face and kind of talk. And that's, I think, one of the most exciting things. Now, Freedom Fest is going to be exciting for us as a network and as shows because we think it's just going to be an amazing event. We think there's going to be so many great things that come out of it for so many people. It's going to be outstanding. But for me, there's some wonderful people that I'm finally going to be able to sit down and shake hands with and put my arm around that I've wanted to for so long. And the exceptional one is at the top of that list. And I really look forward to that in Freedom Fest in July and May. And another cool thing, if you folks are bored and you guys, folks at home, want to email somebody, email the Freedom Fest people and tell them how bad you want the SHR media to be the official broadcast media of Freedom Fest. Yeah, why not? Get in on it. Send them an email. We would love to do that for them. Before we went to break, we were talking about the Taliban. And
the Taliban.
How is that not a song yet? How is it not a song yet? I don't know how. I'm not good at that stuff. But there's
6
so many.
8 foot, 10 foot high.
Come, Mr. Taliban, tally my. Forget it. But
oh man!
But the Taliban, who has been a terrorist group since I really think since Jesus bought his first sandals. You know, for the longest time, all of a sudden, is no longer a designated a terrorist organization by the White House. Now, back in 2010, and it's in my article if you go to shrmedia.com, it's called Rose-Colored Glasses or Rose by any other name. I don't even remember what the hell I named my own article. it talks about that the State Department stopped designating them as foreign terrorist groups back in 2009 or 2010. It was 2010. It was just after Bergdahl was, quote unquote, kidnapped, which I kind of thought was ironic as well. But then yesterday in the White House press briefing, this happened, and I warn you, it's a long clip, but I think it's worth playing in the entirety. Stand by.
Bill?
I agree.
How can the Afghan Taliban not be considered a terrorist organization for purposes of the rest of the U.S. government when the Treasury considers it one and when it has a long history of terrorist acts? Why?
Well, I think, Bill, because what we have done is it's clear that there is a difference between the ambitions that are expressed by the Taliban and the ambitions that are expressed by al-Qaeda.
It hangs entirely on the fact that they are local and al-Qaeda is international?
Well, it certainly makes clear that their aspirations are different. It means that their threat to the American people and our interests are different. The Taliban is very dangerous, and we have expended significant sums of money, and American service members have given their lives fighting the Taliban because they do pose a threat to American interests and to American service members inside of Afghanistan. And we have used some financial sanctions instruments to try to limit the capacity of the Taliban by imposing sanctions against them. But there's no doubt that the threat from the Taliban is different than the threat that is posed by al-Qaeda.
Yes, but it may be smaller in scope, but what is the real difference? I mean, why?
Well, the difference, Bill, is simply that the threat that they pose is different. The threat from the Taliban is acute. If you are a service member serving in Afghanistan, or if you are a U.S. diplomat or a contractor that is working in Afghanistan.
So why are they terrorists?
But isn't every terrorist
Well,
group
so
a little different from every other
yeah.
terrorist group?
They are. But in this case, there is a clear difference between the aspirations that have been articulated by the Taliban and the way that they carry out, or the way that they resort to some of their terror tactics, and the terror attacks that are carried out by al-Qaeda. There's no denying the fact that these are very dangerous organizations, and that's why the United States government, under the leadership of this president, has devoted significant resources to defeating them. And we're going to continue to implement our strategy in Afghanistan that has now turned over the responsibility for the security in Afghanistan to Afghan security forces and their central government, and we're going to continue to support them as they take the fight to the Taliban. This is not a situation of underestimating the Taliban. The president is keenly aware of how dangerous this organization is, and it's why we are forthright about the fact that American personnel serving in Afghanistan continue to face a threat. And we have not ruled out that there would be some situations in which U.S. service members would still carry out operations in self-defense against the Taliban or other terrorists who are operating in Afghanistan.
So are you suggesting that the Afghan Taliban doesn't operate outside of attacks on our personnel in Afghanistan?
No, in fact, Bill, the Taliban in Afghanistan have actually carried out more attacks against the Afghan people than they have even Americans, which is why we support the Afghan central government.
Now, right now, the mouse just fell off the wheel, and here's the rest of the clip.
In trying to defeat them.
Why aren't they terrorists?
Yeah.
We're just asking, why aren't they a terrorist group?
Yeah. And what I'm saying
Simply,
is...
why aren't they a terrorist group?
Right. And what I'm saying is that we have been very clear about what our strategy is to defeat them. And it's different than the strategy... But that's different than the strategy that we have employed against al-Qaeda.
Is it because we don't negotiate with terrorists, and yet we negotiated for the release of Sergeant Bergdahl?
Well, Bill, we've been clear about the fact that the conversations with the Taliban were executed through the Qatari government. And that's the way that release was secured.
Cutout. There was a quid pro quo.
Well, I don't know if that Latin phrase is appropriate in this situation, but there was an agreement.
Yes, it was.
To secure the release of Sergeant Bergdahl, and it was predicated on a core value, a principle that this commander-in-chief subscribes to, which is that somebody who signs up to serve in our armed forces is not going to get left behind.
And by the way, how is that any different from the Jordanians possibly trading for their prisoners?
That's a reasonable question, but it's a question that you should ask the Jordanian government.
Oh, that's a reasonable question. That's such a reasonable question. Ken, you're still with us here on the Exceptional One himself. So, Ken?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, good. It makes your brain leak a little bit, doesn't it? Like, can you honestly just? It's one of the. I know that. I'll tell you right now. The White House spokesman there better find the nearest burn clinic because he's got some damage, and all I'm saying they've done wonders with skin grafts these days. So I want to run down a list of countries or groups that we consider a terrorist group, but not the Taliban. And all of these, let's see, all of them are an immediate threat to America. The Liberation Tigers of Tamil, the Tamil Tigers. Let's go down. The Real
They'll
Irish
be playing
Republic.
ISIL next week.
The Real Irish Republican Army. I don't know if they saw the movie with Harrison Ford, and I think it was Clear and Present Danger, or one of the other ones, the Jack Ryan ones, and thought that maybe they were coming for us, so that one's on there as well. Let's see. No, that group actually is. Hezbollah, Al-Shabaab. Let's see. Other groups who regularly attack us. The Communist Party of the Philippines. I can keep going. The Kurdistan Workers Party, or the Kongagel, Dungadin. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah.
But, and on and on and on. And recently delisted groups. The Japanese Red Army, the Taliban, United States Defense Forces of Colombia. I don't even know what that is. I'm not kidding. You can't make this stuff up.
You can't.
The Mujahideen in Iraq and Iran, the Moroccan Islamic combatant groups, no longer terrorists. Manuel Rodriguez Patriotic Fight in Chile. And the Taliban. Now, Ken, is it safe to assume that the Taliban is no longer a threat to America?
I think it is a reasonable understanding here that they are a armed insurgency, not to be confused with an unarmed insurgency or a armed terrorist group, or even more malignantly, an unarmed terrorist group. You see, one of the problems here is that the issue is not being pertinently considered about the arming of these particular groups. And if we finally come to an understanding that it is the arm and not the group, then we will know that the problem can be resolved if we just disarm all of these particular groups, and thus we will not have to worry about whether they are labeled. I hate people who are labeled. So, yeah, I understand exactly his thinking there. I just can't figure out why conservatives haven't come around to understand his thinking.
Well, we're hate mongers.
Yeah.
Listen, as I said in my article yesterday, it comes down to simple, they found a way to be right. They knew that at some point, somebody was, if they charged Bergdahl with treason, or they knew way back when that Bergdahl was going to come back and bite them in the rear end at some point, I really feel that it's twofold. Bergdahl, and they know that now we're about to pull out of Afghanistan, the Taliban is eventually going to come back into control in Afghanistan, and we may have to negotiate with them as well then. So what do? Instead of dealing with the Taliban the way they need to be dealt with, as we've talked in the past, militarily, and really just making them fear, making them afraid to attack us because of retaliation, we just pull them off the terrorist watch list and change their name, change their designation. Now they're an armed insurgency, as the press secretary went on to say. They consider them an armed insurgency.
Notice how no one asked if the State Department had a list of armed insurgencies.
Well,
no one
in the
asked
reporter's
that question.
defense,
And as far as my research goes, the State Department does have a list of armed insurgencies. Where is this list of armed insurgencies? Does it include the guys that go out on the weekend at the Ponderosa and bang a couple of bucks and bring them back home? Are they part of an armed insurgency?
Ken, mark my words. I am going to email the press room for the State Department tonight and request the list of current armed insurgency groups that we negotiate with.
There you go.
Just to see what the response is going to be. I just want to see what the response is going to be to that, because it's going to be interesting to say the least. Well, but it's like everything else. If you change the name of something, and I brought this point up today, nobody would die from cancer tomorrow if we changed the name from cancer. If we change the name from cancer, nobody will ever die of cancer again. We just eliminate the word cancer. It's like when they don't want to call it Islamist extremism or Islamic terrorists. They call them a few bad actors or people who pervert the religion of Islam. They do whatever they can to get away from that. You change the name. And I said in my article, it's funny. What if they change, they call us right-wing extremists and teabaggers and everything. What if all of a sudden those names start? We already know that the military is being trained to deal with potential insurrection in this country because they've been asked questions. First of all, they've had domestic terrorist groups in their trainings be right-wing extremists, et cetera, as part of military training. That's a fact. That has happened. Your own government, in a way to deal with terrorism stateside, has done so by using Americans as the insurgents, which is just amazingly frightening to me. So the potential is there. What if they change our designation? All of a sudden, anyone who votes with an R next to their name or speaks conservative talk or anything like that is considered an enemy of the state because, they're trying to cause an insurrection. Well, I know we are technically, but I mean technically. I mean make the list, and not the list nobody sees, but the public list. Because it begs the question, is this the next step for them? We look at how we get treated when we call the administration, we call the left on certain things. We look at what they do. They don't have the argument we're trying to have with them. They have the argument they want, and then they call us names. They have the emotional argument versus the literal argument, and then to bolster their point, they call us names and call us extremists. And that's the amazing part is I can't get the President of the United States to say Islamist extremists, but Harry Reid will call real conservatives right-wing extremists.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
It is the most frightening and insane thing on the face of the planet.
Can I go one step further with you on this one? Because we all have to remember that Paul Joseph Goebbels was the propaganda minister in Nazi Germany. Not making comparison between this administration and Nazi Germany for the Al Sharptons of the world that listen to my show. But the key
also
point
look up
of all of
Bernays.
that...
Because he did work for a president, and that's where Goebbels got all of his ideas from, a guy by the name of Bernays. And you know who he worked for, right?
Who did he work for?
Wilson. He was Wilson's propaganda guy.
Woodrow Wilson.
Bernays, the first progressive president.
There you go. So the bottom line is, who controls the language controls how the propaganda is unrolled. And we've been looking at a propaganda machine working 24/7 since his arrival, before his arrival into the office. I just want to say this in this regard. Let's change cancer to candy.
Yep.
Now, you no longer have the crisis of cancer, but everybody eats candy. And now we have a real crisis in America because now cancer is candy and everyone's impacted by that. And who's going to hold all of this together but the government? Only the government can solve this particular problem and issue.
Because they fix so much. Because they fix so much. No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And think about all the things that they've changed the name of over the years to make it sound nicer and better and then ram it back down our throat. Abortion's one of the key ones. I mean, think about all the different names they use for abortion, how they make it try to sound better than it is. And I don't care if you're pro-abortion or against abortion. The simple fact of the matter is it's abortion. When you do it, and I always say this, and we don't talk about abortion a lot in the show because it ends up being such a divisive subject that it's not even worth going into sometimes. But, I always cite when people say, if it's early term abortion, it's not a big deal. And I said, yeah, but if you kill a woman who's 3 weeks pregnant, you can get charged with a double murder. You don't have to know she's pregnant. So, on one hand, the state recognizes that life that early, but on the other hand, they don't. But the things that they've done with abortion and how they've sensationalized it and everything, and they've changed that negative impact, and I understand why they did it is because they wanted it to be a nicer thing. They wanted, and the left loves to, and everyone in the chat room is nailing it. The left loves to use verbal engineering, as Rick Trader is saying in the chat room right now, to achieve their objective. They don't change what it is; they just change what it's called. So instead of, you look at hate crimes, and this is the best example. They coined the term hate crimes, which to me is insane, and I say this all the time because why should one group be treated better than another group when it comes to victimization? Why is this group, if you assault this group, it doesn't matter what you say. I don't care what you say. I don't care what words are involved unless it helps prove the crime. Now, if somebody says, I'm going to kill you, and they shoot a person, all right, then the words are important. But if they're saying horrible names and ethnic slurs and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. You're still committing the crime of violence. That's the one that the problem is. I know we're all emotional boo-boos and everyone gets their feelings hurt, but at the end of the day, I don't care who you punch or why you punch them, the punishment should be the same. But they found a way to lift groups up and make them feel like bigger victims by throwing the name hate crime in front of it. And now everything's a hate crime.
An actor got in trouble earlier this week.
Oh, Cumberbatch.
Yes. For his statement about the Negro. And since we're going towards that month of the year that we're given to recognize the great achievements and accomplishments of only 28 black people.
Yeah, well, that's one for each day.
One for each day.
The shortest month of the year, and you get it.
Can I go with this real quickly? If white was a problem and was always recognized as evil or related to slavery, how come the name white never changed? Yet the name for blacks changed from blacks to Negro to colored to African American.
Yes.
Who's controlling the linguistics on this particular matter? As to say that every time you change your name, you're supposed to be significant, but you become insignificant after the name change. We have groups of people who are using language to destroy what was always the intended purposes of our country, and that was to be e pluribus unum, and that we are one under the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, as written before by Jefferson.
And when you start looking at people and feeling that people of certain colors and religions and sex need to be lifted up more, and you do that by pushing down other groups, then there is no longer equality. People are not being treated equal. There is favoritism. And that same favoritism is just as prejudicial as holding one group or another down based on those same exact things. And it's a good place I wanted to wrap the show up because, it's looking more and more, well, it's almost a done deal now, that the Justice Department will not be filing charges against Officer Darren Wilson, even though they've destroyed his life. I mean, I figured at this point they might as well, I really thought they might as well put the boot all the way to the neck and just hem him up on it, because if you're going to go that far into it, you might as well fully destroy his life. But no, they're just going to lead him his life bleeding, if you will, and not enough to kill him, just enough to make him really uncomfortable for the rest of his days. And you've destroyed his life by these false accusations, even though all the evidence, and it was early on that all of us saw the video of the body laying in the street and the two guys talking off to the right about what really happened. It was within 2 or 3 days that video surfaced, and we all said right away that those two were the best people to judge that situation because they didn't know they were being recorded.
Yeah.
And come to find out, everything they said was essentially 100% true. But instead, you had this country be torn apart almost at the seams over race relations. It's continuing to go on. It is, and you look, that leak that they're not going to prosecute him, that was intentional. Look at how long it's been, and they talk about it here and there, a couple days, blah, 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 because they don't want it to be the big hit that they know it would be if they just came out and announced it. So they're going to give people time to to kind of swallow it and let it roll around in their stomach for a little bit, and then it'll be a little blurb on page 5. But here's a man whose life was ruined because he did the right thing. And in this country, there will be no formal apology. There would be absolutely no walking back. It finds out the Ferguson Police Department are not as racist as everyone's saying, which is the other thing the Justice Department's going to say. And yet we still have the likes of Al Sharptons and the other race pimps running around. And I talked to a friend of mine today who works in law enforcement. Guess what he's now forced to wear as a result of Ferguson? A body camera. He's wearing a body camera. And he said, I don't mind wearing the body camera. I don't do anything wrong. However, I have 2 issues. The amount of money this is costing my department over something that didn't happen, and it's taxpayer money that's being wasted on this. And B, I am now recording people who haven't provided their consent in their homes sometimes to be recorded. And he feels like it's a violation of people's Fourth Amendment rights. And the people who are afraid of Big Brother, Big Brother's everywhere, Big Brother's everywhere, guess what? You just asked for this even more. And you're finally getting what you want. And mark my words, it's only a matter of time before there's an instant cross-reference for people where your face will show up on that camera and it's going to immediately process through a system. And if you have any issues with the police, you're going to know it right away. It's scary.
Exactly.
It's scary.
Forget the 90-day rule by these particular state institutions that are trying to implore us to give up our Fourth Amendment rights. You need to be fighting the good fight right here, right now, against the leftists and the progressives who have decided that a police state is what this country needs. No, what this country needs is a police state in which you, the American citizen, police the American police. And you can only do that by having a local force and not a national one that's prescribed to indicate that you're guilty before you are considered innocent. I just want to say one other thing. I thank you so much for allowing me to come on the air with you on Stockheads Radio tonight, which is the best in urban conservative. Well, no, that's my show. The best of late night conservative talk.
Live from the nation's cap. Oh, wait.
There you go. But I want to say this. A lot of people think that I might be disheartened or hurt about the jokes that we make about race. First and foremost, I am an American. So I am not subject to racial stereotypes. Secondly, Stockheads Radio, these are my great, great friends. And I love them. We joke about this stuff all the time because we don't take this stuff seriously. We believe that the Constitution settled everything that Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson are still fighting for. The Constitution's made us free, or at least observed us to be free, and it's us who are responsible to live free or die. I want to thank you so much for having me on the show tonight, man.
Hey, man, you know it's always a pleasure. I also, I try to remind people that when they get off on their little racial tangents, I always say to them, do you know that one of the first people to die for our nation was an African American? And I can
or
even
Negro,
tell you his name.
Or colored or black.
I can tell you his name. I've even been to his house where he was born. His name is Crispus Attucks. You know why I know that? Because I judge Americans as Americans. I don't care what color their skin is. I worry about the content of their character, which a very, very wise man once told us about, and I believe that to this very day. And if you can't turn around and have a little bit of fun and poke fun at yourself and each other, we've lost as a country. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. We have to find the humor in the little things that separate us. And I have a friend of mine who's actually Arab, and he goes, hey, you know what? Stereotypes are there for a reason on one hand, but more importantly, they're just funny sometimes. And it's true.
That's right.
Trust me, as an Irish American, I always say this all the time. My people, quote-unquote Irish American, but of Irish heritage, my people were brought over here as slaves at the same time. People forget about that. And the term paddy wagon, coined by the New York Police Department, was for my people to be picked up and driven to the cell because they used to call them paddies, and they were all drunk on the side of the street. And you know what? It's one of my favorite vehicles I see on the road nowadays is a paddy wagon, because I know that my culture and my heritage had something to do with that need.
Exactly. Hey, Sean.
Sir.
Hey, Sean. I'm Irish, too.
I know. but only from the waist
brethren.
up. Mr. Exceptional, I know you have to get up early. I appreciate you being with us.
Sir.
We love you. You know that. And I thank you so much for being with me this evening. I kind of got put out on my own and had a lot of things going on. And once again, always, I knew one of my brothers would come to my side and help me out, and I knew you were there, and God bless you for that.
God bless you, sir. Have a wonderful evening. God bless everyone. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. An American Conservative Exploration of the Inspired Word of God. Love you. Peace.
Love you, man. Take care, everyone. Oh! We'll be back. And, hey, we're on next Tuesday night here on the Sackheads Radio Show. Another special edition for us. Tuesday night, 8 p.m., the SHR Media Network. And now, a word from our sponsors.
You've been listening to the Evan Miller Report.
No, you weren't. That wasn't the Evan Miller Report. Damn it, Soko!
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying cow for the stupid program.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Soko as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.